For years now, one thing has really kept me up at night, a topic the majority of folks never really pause to question. Everyone accepts that back in 1969, mankind achieved the incredible Neil Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface first, with Buzz Aldrin right behind him, as billions watched live on TV. It stands as one of humanity's greatest triumphs, yet dive deeper into the actual science, the raw physics, the massive energy requirements, the tech limitations of that era, the brutal radiation exposure, extreme temperature swings, and the laughably limited computing power, and suddenly a troubling doubt creeps in. How on earth did they manage it? Hold on, before you label me a wild conspiracy nut, hear me out. I'm a working physicist specializing in string theory at City University of New York. My world revolves around hard evidence, precise math, and the rigor of the scientific method. That's precisely why this intrigues me so much. Crunch the numbers, examine the engineering hurdles, and the whole Apollo moon landing starts looking downright improbable. Consider this: in 1969, NASA's top computers paled in comparison to today's smartphones. The Apollo guidance computer had just 64 kilobytes of memory. Your phone has millions of times that. They guided the entire mission with less processing power than a basic modern watch or key fob. Still, they nailed complex orbital trajectories, navigated vast space, touched down softly on the moon, lifted off again, rendezvoused perfectly in orbit, and returned safely home, all on tech weaker than your car's remote. How could that even work? Let's break down orbital mechanics a bit. Heading to the moon isn't simply aiming and blasting off, it's grappling with the infamous three-body problem involving Earth, Moon, and spacecraft, each tugging gravitationally on the others. This chaos has no clean, closed-form mathematical solution, only approximations and intensive iterative computations. In the late 60s, they tackled this with a mere 64 KB machine. Pause and let that sink in. Today's experts rely on supercomputers with exponentially more power just for satellite paths, yet NASA aced it first time around with 1960s gear. Sure, prior missions like Apollo 8, 9, and 10 tested key elements, but the error margins were razor thin, and they pulled off success after success, even saving the crew after Apollo 13's crisis. So, the real puzzle isn't if it happened, it's how they conquered obstacles that appear utterly daunting. Take radiation, for instance. Deep space bombards you with cosmic rays, solar particles, and trapped radiation in Earth's magnetic field. Beyond our planet's shield, doses skyrocket. Apollo crafts had thin aluminum skins, basically a metal tube offering minimal protection. True shielding demands dense materials like lead or water, inches thick, to stop those high-energy particles. Millimeters of aluminum barely scratch the surface. Then come the Van Allen belts, rings of charged particles encircling Earth, discovered in 1958. Any moon trip must traverse them. NASA explains quick passage limited exposure to tolerable levels, and calculations back that up for rapid transits. But intriguingly, a decade ago, a NASA engineer publicly stated we still need to crack radiation shielding for ventures beyond low Earth orbit, saying we must solve these challenges first. Wait, didn't we already do it multiple times? The difference boils down to evolving standards. Today's protocols demand far lower risks than the 60s, when astronauts knowingly accepted higher exposure as part of the high-stakes job. Yet it begs the question, if primitive tools suffice then, why does it feel insurmountable now? Another head-scratcher: lunar temperatures. Daytime highs hit 117 C, hot enough to boil water, while nights plunge to 173 C, freezing gas is solid. Apollo crews arrived during milder morning hours, but direct sunlight baked the surface without atmospheric diffusion or shade, just pure solar fury. Their suits featured innovative liquid cooling undergarments, but engineering a flexible, pressurized, durable garment that handles such extremes while allowing free movement. That's masterful design. They worked flawlessly for extended EVAs. Remarkable, perhaps suspiciously so at first glance. Now, the lunar module itself, it resembled a foil-wrapped contraption on spindly legs, fragile and makeshift looking. Yet it descended from orbit, landed on unpredictable terrain, relaunched and docked, all with an untested engine in lunar vacuum and manual piloting via that basic computer. Landing meant throttling precisely in 46 gravity, scouting safe spots with dwindling fuel. One mistake and catastrophe. They succeeded 6 flawless times, including Armstrong's daring manual override with seconds of fuel left. That's either peak human expertise and fortune or raises eyebrows. Photography adds another layer: thousands of stunning, crisp moon shots with vintage Hasselblad film cameras. In bulky gloves, no viewfinder access, shooting blind, yet nearly perfect framing, exposure, and focus every time, rivaling pro studios under ideal conditions. Extensive training and preset settings explain much, but the near 100% hit rate is astounding. Film vulnerability to radiation, cosmic rays should have fogged it, but images emerged pristine. Clever shielding or luck? These puzzles don't scream fake. To me, they highlight how extraordinarily clever the solutions were, pushing boundaries to the edge of believability. As a kid watching those broadcasts, it ignited my passion for physics. I thought, if we can conquer the moon, anything's possible. Now, with deeper knowledge, I'm more awestruck than ever at the near miraculous feat. But the biggest sting, over 50 years later, no human return. With superior tech today, faster computers, advanced materials, stronger rockets, shouldn't it be simpler? Official reasons cite cost and shifting priorities. Robots handle science cheaper. Valid, but you'd expect someone to have revisited by now. Unless it's tougher than admitted, challenges deeper than realized. Enter the Tsiolkovsky rocket equation. Velocity gains demand exponential fuel. Most of the massive Saturn V was propellant just to haul the rest. They built history's mightiest machine reliably, with no launch failures. Contrast modern struggles like Starship explosions or SLS delays and overruns. How massive funding, top talent, Cold War urgency. They innovated on the fly, fuel cells, suits, everything new, and it functioned. Communication delays forced autonomous decisions like Armstrong's boulder dodge. Space's zero tolerance for errors, yet Apollo mostly triumphed. Odds defyingly low, the waving flag, twisting motion in vacuum lingered without air drag, proof of no atmosphere, not hoax. Lunar rocks bear unique traits, no water-formed minerals, micrometeorite pits, ancient ages, impossible to fake then or now. Soviets retrieved samples robotically but confirmed Apollo's authenticity, tracking signals and conceding the race. No major solar flares hit during missions, monitored luck. Overall, an epic triumph, but heightened modern caution explains the hiatus. Personal note, building my own accelerator as a teen mirrored NASA's grit, scavenging, improvising against odds. Everything aligned perfectly in 69E talent, funds, motivation, fortune. It proved humans excel at the possible when united. The F1 engine won 5 million pounds thrust, devouring fuel like a beast, designed without modern sims, just testing. Explosions, iterations, 13's complexity immense, yet 60's handcrafting nailed it. Tacit knowledge lost post-program, can't easily rebuild. Apollo guidance computer, code flawless in tiny memory, pioneered software reliability, handled overloads gracefully. Modern power brings bugs, simplicity bred dependability. Suits pressurized, cooled ingeniously via sublimators, custom fit, work perfectly, unlike today's delayed, bloated programs demanding more features. Lunar module, lightweight by necessity, brilliant minimalism, untested full descent profile, yet first try success, high risk accepted then. Navigation to star sections plus ground tracking, pinpoint across void. Life support consumable but reliable for short trips. Photos Riz grids prove authenticity, preset for lunar light, practice perfected composition. Cosmic ray tracks confirm space exposure, logistics 400,000 involved, no leaks in decades. Flag, shadows, vacuum, uneven terrain physics. Tracking retroreflectors, hardware existence, Apollo 13's realistic failure, all cement reality, radiation managed via trajectory, samples diverse, genuine, tight 8-year timeline from near zero experience. Evidence overwhelming, real, extraordinary achievement. Why no return? Budget cuts post-victory, lost infrastructure, shifted focus to LEO. Political driver faded, modern bureaucracy, risk aversion, slow progress. Private sector slashing costs, reusing, reviving momentum. Exploration inspires innovation, ensures survival, rocket equation limits, need new propulsion. Mars tougher timelines, 2030 SARS Kardashev scale urges expansion. Conspiracy roots in distrust impossibility feel, but facts prevail. Future moon-based Mars solar system, destiny and stars, building on Apollo's proof we conquer the unconquerable when committed. It was possible, but we did it. That's humanity. The story of Apollo is often told in the language of engineering thrust to weight ratios, delta V budgets, and computer cycles. But to truly understand its near impossibility, we must also speak the unwritten physics of human courage and systemic trust. Every mission was a delicate chain of a million critical components, physical, digital, and human. The reliability of each part had to be near perfect. But near perfect does not exist in engineering. Everything has a failure rate. Apollo worked because of a concept called positive redundancy, not just having backups, but having diverse backups. If a primary system was electronic, its backup might be mechanical. If a calculation was digital, an astronaut could check it with a manual sextant sighting on the stars, a technology millennia old. This wasn't just safety, it was philosophical wisdom. They bridged the prehistoric and the futuristic, the analog and the digital, creating a robust intelligence no single system could possess. Consider the moment of lunar orbit insertion. As the spacecraft passed behind the moon, all contact with Earth vanished for a tense, silent 48 minutes. Inside the command module, the engine had to fire with absolute precision to slow them into lunar orbit. If it burned too long, they would crash into the far side, too short, and they would skip off into a permanent, lonely solar orbit. This burn was pre-programmed into the computer, but its initiation relied on the astronauts. They were, for those minutes, utterly alone in the cosmos, executing a maneuver that had only been modeled on Earth. The success of this step was a testament to a profound, hard-earned trust in the equations scribbled on blackboards in Houston, trust in the craftsmen who welded the engine nozzles, and trust in their own calibrated instincts. This fusion of human and machine agency at the edge of the known is a paradigm we have yet to fully recapture. The Shadow mission, what almost happened. Popular history celebrates the successes, but Apollo's reality is etched in the contingency plans. For every triumphant step on live television, there was a shadow mission, a grim, meticulously detailed protocol for disaster. What if the lunar module ascent engine failed? NASA devised a harrowing plan. The stranded astronaut would depressurize his suit, ending his life quickly to spare his partner a futile and agonizing wait. Mission Control had prepared, though never delivered, a special speech for President Nixon to read if Armstrong and Aldrin were trapped. In event of moon disaster, speech is a chilling monument to the gravity of the gamble. Every smiling photo from the lunar surface exists alongside these unseen documents, reminding us that victory was not preordained but wrested from a universe indifferent to human ambition. Furthermore, we often forget the minor miracles. The spacecraft's heat shield, for example, was a mystery even to its engineers. The ablative material, designed to char and vaporize away, carrying heat with it, could not be fully tested on Earth. They could simulate re-entry conditions in arc jet facilities, but they could never replicate the exact plasma dynamics of a 25,000 MUF return from the moon. Engineers had to rely on fundamental physics, scale models, and a degree of faith. On the day of re-entry, when the command module was a blazing meteor streaking across the Pacific sky, the entire team could only watch, listen for the radio beacon, and hope their calculations held. The shield worked perfectly every time, but its success resided in a domain of theory that bordered on art. The silence after the fanfare, why we truly stopped. The standard explanation for the end of Apollo, waning public interest and cost, is correct but incomplete. Beneath it lies a more subtle technological and philosophical fatigue. By Apollo 17, the engineers and astronauts had pushed the Saturn V and Apollo spacecraft to their logical limits, but those limits were becoming clear. The system was spectacular for brief, expeditionary missions, but it was astronomically expensive and inherently unsustainable. Each mission consumed a custom-built, disposable skyscraper of technology. The visionaries at NASA, like Wernher von Braun, had always imagined the next step: permanent space stations, nuclear shuttles, and lunar bases. But the political and economic capital required for that next leap had been exhausted by the first one. The nation had achieved the symbolic goal, but the infrastructure for the next, more practical phase did not exist. We didn't just run out of money, we ran out of the immediate, tangible purpose that could justify such expenditure to a public now facing earthly crises like Vietnam and social unrest. This created what historian Alex Rowland called the Apollo paradox, a program so successful, so focused on a single, discrete goal that it left no sustainable pathway forward. It was a sprint, not a foundation. The space shuttle program that followed was an attempt to create that foundation by making access to low Earth orbit routine and affordable. Yet, in many ways, it was a compromise that trapped the United States in Earth's gravitational well, both literally and politically, for 30 years. The shuttle's complexity, born from trying to be all things to all missions, made it more expensive and risky than the disposable Apollo system. We traded the audacity of the moon for the practicality of orbit, and in doing so, lost momentum. The modern calculus, a new kind of hard. Today's challenge with programs like Artemis is not a simpler replay of Apollo, it is a different, more complex equation. Apollo's problem was, can we get there once? Artemis's problem is, can we learn to live there? This shifts the engineering paradigm from minimum viable capability to sustainable systems resilience. The computing paradox, we laugh at the AGC's 6 but its limitation bred transcendent elegance. Modern software running on billions of transistors is incalculably more powerful but also more opaque and vulnerable. A bug in a million-line codebase can be elusive. The AGC's software could be, and was, understood by a single person from top to bottom. We now face the challenge of creating systems that are both supremely capable and provably reliable, a task that may require a return to some forms of simpler, verifiable code for critical functions. The materials revolution. We have materials Apollo engineers could only dream of. Carbon fiber composites, heat-resistant ceramics like TUF-Ralphie, and additive manufactured alloys. Yet these new materials bring new certification challenges. The F-1 engine was made of known weldable metals. A 3D printed methane engine for a starship, while more efficient, carries the statistical uncertainty of a novel fabrication process. We trade known risks for unknown ones in pursuit of greater performance and reusability. The International Equation Apollo was a national project. Artemis is an international and commercial partnership. This collaboration brings broader resources and political stability, but also the immense complexity of coordinating different technologies, safety standards, and cultural approaches to risk. The software alone for interfacing a European service module with an Orion capsule is a diplomatic achievement as much as a technical one. The Fermi paradox through the Apollo lens. The Apollo experience offers a sobering lens through which to view the famous Fermi paradox. Where is everybody? If a civilization develops the technology for interstellar travel or communication, why do we see no evidence? Apollo suggests a possible answer. The great filter may not be a single event, but a recurring cycle of will and entropy. A civilization may achieve a singular, Apollo-like triumph, a burst of collective will that overcomes immense technical hurdles. But sustaining that momentum across generations, transforming a spectacular achievement into a permanent capability, may be a far greater challenge. The gap between Apollo 17 and Artemis is over 50 years, a blink in cosmic time, but a lifetime in human politics and economics. If this pattern is common, the galaxy may be littered with civilizations that reach their local moon, celebrated, and then turned inward, their technology fading into myth before it could ever reach the stars. Apollo then becomes more than a historical event. It is a test case for whether a technological species can overcome its own cyclical nature and maintain a multi-generational commitment to becoming spacefaring. Inheriting the Apollo mindset. The ultimate legacy of Apollo may not be the rockets or the rocks, but the mindset. It was a mindset that refused to separate theory from practice, that embraced constraints as a source of creativity, and that accepted mortal risk in pursuit of a transcendent goal. As we stand on the threshold of a new era, the question is not whether we have better technology, but whether we can reassemble that mindset in a world that is more risk-averse, more fragmented, and more distracted. The new pioneers, whether at NASA, SpaceX, or other organizations, are trying to do just that. They are combining Apollo's boldness with Silicon Valley's iterative speed and the sustainability goals of a global community. They are building not just rockets, but ecosystems. When we look at the moon now, we see more than a trophy from the past. We see a classroom for our future. It is a place to master the technologies of closed-loop life support, of using extraterrestrial resources, of operating in deep space. It is the necessary graduate school before the ultimate doctoral thesis, Mars. The moon is our proving ground, not just for machines, but for our species' ability to persevere. Apollo was the thesis proposal brilliantly defended. The coming decades will be the arduous, detailed work of the dissertation itself. The universe is not just waiting to see if we can repeat a stunt. It is waiting to see if we can learn, adapt, and stay. The impossible thing has already been done. Now we must do the hard, sustainable, necessary thing, and in that long, difficult effort, we may discover that the final, most important frontier is not space, but our own capacity for patience, persistence, and shared purpose across the generations.